homecoming showcase. We're going to have a really great show for y'all tonight. First off, I want to thank all of our alumni who are here for this awesome alumni work meeting. Thank you so much for coming to help us out this weekend. There'll be more thanks tomorrow, more gratitude tomorrow, but I'm incredibly appreciative of y'all coming here tonight. Let's get it for our alumni. Much to all of our guests who are joining us this evening. You're going to have a really great time. I think our first performance this evening is going to be a lot of fun. He's going to be doing an after-dinner speech, which is a humorous speech. It's designed to persuade the audience to change their minds about something, but the way you do that is by making people laugh. So feel free to have a good time if he's funny. He'll be great. We're really excited to have a junior transfer student here with us. He's done an awesome amount of work so far this season. Let's give it up for Sal Tinahara.
One time, my dad was rushed to the hospital for chest pain. Just wait, it gets so much better. When he came to, the nurse asked some questions about his medical history, if he knew his own name. He totally did. When they were finished, the nurse smiled and said, "Wow, you speak real good English for a foreign guy." What? Like, where do I even begin? He was a speech coach and educator for 20 years, has 2 college degrees from the Midwest, and was born in Southern California. English may not be his first language, but at least he knows that grammatically, that sentence should have been, "You speak English well." I mean, it'd still be racist, but at least it'd be proper. It was right about then that I was faced by my own problematicism by the media on November 28th, 2017, saying, "Grammar is classist, ableist, and oppressive." Damn! Grammar is a concept we're taught to adhere in order to properly communicate our ideas. But when we believe that proper grammar is the only way to give our voices legitimacy, countless voices are silenced. Often those that didn't have access to the same resources that we did. And we end up amplifying the voices of the white, straight, cisgendered, and affluent. And full offense, but I've seen more than enough Fox News. So today, we will look at the causes, effects, and solutions to see why grammar classism is not just bad, but detrimental to our development. Except for the Oxford comma. That shit is always necessary. And here are 3 stupid rules we're supposed to follow when practicing proper grammar. Don't start a sentence with conjunction, don't try to hastily split infinitives, and don't use prepositions to end a sentence with. If you don't get it, I just broke those rules in that sentence. And it was a run-on. Boom. Grammar classism stems from 2 causes: grammar snobs and prescriptivist learning. First, grammar snobs. And don't call them grammar Nazis, because they're not Nazis. They're just elitists using antiquated logic to preserve a hierarchy they created for their benefit, and oh my stars, they are Nazis! No, not really. According to the aforementioned medium, grammar is about privilege. Knowing the rules shows that you have education, not intelligence. And who came up with these grammar rules anyway? White people? Oh, it was totally white people. Grammar snobs are like shoulder demons whispering, "Someone wrote Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U''R-E. That means they're dumb and you're not. Bathe in your unearned sense of superiority. Bathe in it!" Too often, grammar snobs make people feel ashamed rather than enlightened. Like my bathroom mirror. Prescriptivism refers to enforcing the rules of correct grammar. It teaches that other dialects are inferior, improper, or just wrong. From kindergarten, you're taught to follow the rules of grammar and to stop eating your boogers, Sal. Then, 12 years of schooling with lectures and essays teaching you that grammar is a hungry god that'll eat your adverbs. Then, college, which is school, but with crippling debt and binge drinking. And the expectation that you follow the rules. And then if you go into education, you teach these rules to your students and never wonder why we follow these rules in the first place. It's like time limits for speech. Girl, if I want to go 15 minutes, I'm going 15 minutes. I'm kidding, I would never do that. On purpose. Remember that press conference when Donald Trump pulled a Latino Border Patrol agent on stage to speak with no warning? Talk about national television being... Nationally televised impromptu is the one way to really make you crap your pants. Then, to reassure the audience, Trump said, "Don't worry, he speaks perfect English." Pinche maldito desgraciado. Now to the effects. Focusing on rules obstructs communication, and it's discriminatory. First, focusing on the rules distracts from the actual content of communication, according to the Maven Roundtable on July 8th, 2018. When Donald Trump tweeted the word poor, but wrote P-O-U-R instead of P-O-R-E, famed author of The Cuckoo's Calling, J.K. Rowling. She wrote other stuff. Anyway, she made fun of his error and was retweeted 51,000 times. Heckling Trump for his P-O-O-R grammar may be entertaining as F-U-C-K, but he doesn't care, and neither do his supporters. You know what's worse than his spelling? Tax breaks for billionaires, separating kids from their families, the fact that he keeps having children. His grammar shouldn't be the point. It's like if your local sex dungeon only let you use the word kumquat as your safe word instead of something you're more comfortable with, like moist. Expecting everyone to communicate the same way that you want to tap out from tapping it is just absurd. Unless it's with Donnie. Again, 4 kids is enough. Not counting Tiffany. She doesn't deserve that. Next, grammar alienates marginalized communities. According to the Maven Roundtable on July 8th, 2018, Miss Manners answered a teacher struggling with her transgender students' request to be referred to as they, since it's a plural pronoun for a single person. Miss Manners explains, clinging to outdated rules shows not concern for linguistic propriety, but a classist, ableist, racist approach to communication. Damn! Miss Manners snatched her wig so hard, she probably grew some melanin and spoke in tongues. Por la poder de la Virgen María. The previously mentioned Maven Roundtable puts it best. Using grammar to humiliate impacts others too. Those from underfunded schools with learning challenges, who know English as a second language, or who speak a form of English considered improper. We shouldn't denigrate those with less privilege than us. We denigrate those with more privilege because it's fun. Watch this, watch this. White people. Jezebel, on May 13, 2018, claimed Cardi B deleted her Instagram after being criticized for her grammar. Cardi responded saying, "I speak how I speak, I am how I am. I don't have to change my ways, I'm famous." Oh, yes. You go, Cardi. Ochre. So what can we do about all this? Solutions. Be a descriptivist and don't be a great big old stupid jerk face. First, instead of taking a prescriptivist approach, take a descriptivist approach to grammar. Linguistic scholar Amy Reynolds from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill defines descriptivism as describing Amazing. Language as it is used, not how it should be used. Language evolves, and clinging to outdated rules doesn't help anyone. Listen to the perspectives of those in marginalized communities. There should be no background or education requirement in order to have a voice. I have a link available to guidelines on how to teach descriptivist grammar, and I'd be more than happy to provide it after this showcase. You hear me? More than happy. More. Finally, don't be a great big old stupid jerk face. It's that simple. Some people have families who didn't have access to a privileged education, or who speak a form of English considered improper, or live with dyslexia. That is what makes our voices interesting, worthy, and legitimate. If you teach, be accommodating in your classrooms. Focus on the intent and content of what someone is saying, instead of the manner in which they say it, and whether or not it coincides with our prescriptivist grammar. These rules exist to assist communication. But if someone breaks these rules and their thoughts are still clear, then maybe the rules they broke just weren't that important. Don't get me wrong. I know it's a little ironic to talk about how having rules of communication is bad in an event where we communicate according to a set, but maybe that means this is the community that needs to hear this message the most. So my dad didn't call out his racist nurse's grammar. You know why? Because he's not a Nazi. A grammar Nazi. But also not a literal Nazi. It's one of my favorite things about him. So today, we look to the causes, effects, and solutions to the issues with our grammar. It's important to understand that language comes in many forms, and we should be willing to embrace these differences. As advocates for diversity and change, we should be willing to use safe words other than kumquat.
Thank you, Sal. Great job. Our next presenter is going to be doing a selection of prose. So this student took a novel and she cut it all the way down into a 10-minute performance. It's an interpretation event. What you just saw was an example of a public address event. So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome sophomore Emma Warnicki.
The Husband Stitch by Carmen Maria Machado. I am 17 at a neighbor's party with my parents. I know I want him before he does. I see the muscles of his upper back, how he strains out of his shorts. The boy says, "Hello." He asks my name. I've always wanted to choose my moment, and this is the moment I choose. I kiss him. He kisses me back, gently at first, but then harder. He takes me in his car, in the dark, to a lake with a marshy edge. He is hard and hot and smells like bread. And when he breaks me, I cling to him like I am lost at sea. Afterward, I can hear the sounds of the pond. The wind picks up off the water and cools my body down. "What's that?" he asks. I touch the ribbon at the back of my neck. I run my fingers around and bring them to rest on the tight bow that sits at front. He reaches out his hand and I seize it and press it away. There's nothing to tell. It's my ribbon. "May I touch it?" he asks. No. If you're reading this story out loud, the sounds of the lake can best be reproduced by taking a deep breath, then release all at once, permitting your chest to collapse like a block tower knocked to the ground. in works of fiction, we often look to the author, exploring their experiences and background for clues. Clark University writing professor Jane Dykema employs a different approach, emphasizing the connection between a story and its audience. Arguing some stories impact our memories so vividly, we internalize them as our own. Dykema found this phenomenon to be especially potent after introducing the following story into her curriculum. After reading it, she explains, "Male students don't speak, and women often cry," unable to explain why. This performance seeks not only to become the woman in Mikado's story, but to also experience it as a reader. So, as Dykema suggests, we can communally experience its power. The Husband Stitch by Carmen Maria Machado. And when he asks me to marry him, days shy of my 18th birthday, I say, yes, yes, please. And on that park bench, I sit on his lap and fan my skirt around us so a passerby wouldn't realize what was happening beneath it. "I feel like I know so many parts of you," he says to me, "and now I will know all of them." My cycle stops soon after we return from our honeymoon. I tell my husband one night after we are spent and sprawled across our bed. He glows with real delight. "Will the child have a ribbon?" he asks. I feel my jaw tighten and my hand fondles my bow involuntarily. "There's no saying now," I tell him finally. He stares at me, then runs his hand around my throat. I put up my hands to stop him, but he uses his strength, grabbing my wrist with one hand as he touches the bow with the other. I said no! He looks confused and hurt. If you're reading this story out loud, bang loudly in the face of the people closest to you. Observe their fear, their betrayal. Notice how they never look at you exactly the same way again. I am in labor for 20 hours. The doctor says, "We may have to deliver the baby surgically." I don't want that, I say. He says, "It may be best for everyone." He looks up, and I am almost certain he winks at my husband. But pain makes the mind see things. "Little one," I think, "this is the last time that we are going to be just you and me. Please don't make them cut you out of me." Little one is born 20 minutes later. They do have to make a cut, but not across my stomach. The doctor draws his scalpel down instead. When the baby is placed into my arms, I examine the wrinkled body from head to toe, the color of a sunset sky. No ribbon. A boy. They take the baby so they may fix me where they cut. My husband jokes around with the doctor. "How much to get that extra stitch?" he asks. "You offer that, right?" The doctor chuckles. "You aren't the first." I slide down a long tunnel and then surface again, this time covered in something heavy and dark like oil. I feel like I'm going to vomit. The doctor walks in, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You're all sewn up. Don't you worry. I recover a small amount every day. Eventually, I am healed enough to take my husband back into my bed. I weep with happiness as he touches me. We fall asleep, exhausted, sprawled naked in our bed. When I wake, my husband is kissing the back of my neck, probing the ribbon with his tongue. My body rebels wildly, still throbbing with memories of pleasure, but bucking hard against betrayal. I say his name, and he doesn't respond. I say it again, and he holds me against him and continues. I wedge my elbows in his side. Please, I say, please don't. My husband is not a bad man. To describe him as evil or wicked would do a deep disservice to him. And this, I realize suddenly, is the root of my hurt. I look at him. After this many years, is that all you want of me? His face flashes greedily. Yes. Then do what you want. With trembling fingers, he takes one of the ends. The bow undoes, slowly. The ribbon falls to the floor and curls at my feet. My weight shifts, and with it, gravity seizes me. My husband's face falls away, and I see the ceiling as my head tips backwards off my neck and rolls off the bed. I feel as lonely as I have ever been. If you're reading this story out loud, you may be wondering if that place my ribbon protected was wet with blood. I'm afraid I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I've forgotten the rest of the story.
Doing another self-authored speech. It is a persuasive speech, so it's designed to make you change your mind about something. Please welcome our next speaker, Lane Hedrick.
Carl Rom saw a doctor to treat a staph infection. No big deal. A course of antibiotics and then back to normal. But he kept getting sick. He'd present with random bouts of the flu or bronchitis and then back to the doctor for another round of antibiotics. After multiple, unsuccessful treatments, he contracted a heart infection that required open heart surgery. He was set to be released when his father found him unconscious in the hospital shower. Rom was a strong, healthy 27-year-old veteran, and just 2 months after contracting a routine staph infection, dead. According to a 2017 CDC report, Rom's tragic death links him to 23,000 other Americans who die of antimicrobial-resistant pathogens every year. Infections we've considered treatable for nearly a century. Pew Trust, last updated 2018, clarifies. Bacteria are consistently evolving to beat the antibiotics that we take to fight them. As bacteria mutate, they become resistant. A normal process drug companies normally fight by consistently developing new drugs. But according to the World Health Organization in 2018, Modern medicine's persistent misuse of antibiotics accelerates the rate of antimicrobial resistance, often outpacing development efforts. And as Mother Jones warns in 2018, Big Pharma has now almost completely abandoned the research field because it's not very profitable. Globally, antibiotic-resistant pathogens claim 700,000 lives annually, a number poised to rise unless we get serious about this deadly public health crisis. So let's explore its two fundamental causes: slower drug development and faster rates of resistance, before following each with its own solution. This time last year, I could not have shared my story. I had been sick from antibiotic resistance for upwards of 6 months. During a hospital stay, Meredith Littlejohn contracted an infection that quickly became resistant to antibiotics, prompting doctors to administer a last resort drug. Despite their efforts, the infection quickly seeped into her bloodstream, and within a year, she passed away. The first cause of Meredith's death? Big Pharma's lack of interest. Inspect any typical prescription for an antibiotic, and you can almost guarantee that the script will be one of 3 things: Augmentin, amoxicillin, or Bactrim. Why? Because thanks to Big Pharma, very few antibiotics are being developed. The National Center for Biotechnology confirms in 2018, of the world's 18 largest pharmaceutical companies, 15 have completely abandoned the search. This is because antibiotics are used for relatively short periods of time and are often curative, so they aren't as profitable as drugs that treat chronic conditions like diabetes. So drug companies don't invest. Now, there are some companies continuing research like Teflaro, but their teams are understaffed and underfunded, leading Forbes to explain in August of 2018, antibiotics are just a small percentage of a company's overall sales. So CEOs consider them unimportant. There may be over 100 antibiotics out there. We could probably name a few more. But they've been derived from the same group of drugs for several decades. And we're running out of time. Fighting Big Pharma is a pretty big deal. And patient advocacy groups are struggling, but this is where we as active and engaged citizens can help. The previously cited Forbes explains, antibiotic resistance should not be subjected to the whim of the bottom line. It should be a government priority. So they suggest socialization by the National Institute of Health. That way, current usage of antibiotics can keep up with tracks of resistance and development. But it's up to us to get the ball rolling. I've written a letter to send to your state representatives encouraging them to consider legislation in favor of NIH action. A letter to send to the 15 pharmaceutical companies who have completely abandoned the field, and then another letter to send to patient advocacy groups asking how you can help. I have letters, envelopes, stamps, literally whatever you may need. See me after this showcase, because I'm ready to fight. But while you're waiting, check out the Antimicrobial Resistance Benchmark, which has been created by the World Health Foundation. It's created policies that leaders in the pharmaceutical companies can not only implement, but spread word about. You can see what some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, like Johnson & Johnson, are doing to decrease resistance on a daily basis. I get it. We love to bash Big Pharma, but we also have to acknowledge the companies that are doing the right thing so that we can help good ideas spread. While completing her medical training in Russia, Tian Ting developed a fever. Like any of us, she went to the doctor and received antibiotics. 3 rounds later, she still had a high fever, had night sweats, and was coughing up blood. It was drug-resistant tuberculosis, and she barely survived. No thanks to her doctors who overprescribed antibiotics. Common clinical practices encourage faster rates of resistance. It's no surprise our doctors like to keep our visits short, sweet, and to the point. In fact, the Minnesota Post explains on July 11, 2018, doctors on average give patients just 11 seconds to explain their symptoms and decide upon a course of action. And we deserve more than 11 seconds. When a person comes in with a sore throat or flu-like symptoms, doctors are quick to prescribe a course of antibiotics. But according to Dr. Adam Hirsch in the Journal of Clinical Psychology in April of 2017, at least 30%, or a little under 1 in 3 cases of all antibiotics prescribed in outpatient settings in America annually are later deemed unnecessary. Simple infections like those in the throat, which college students are very prone to getting, can more than likely be fixed with a little bit of R&R. But when millions of patients are instead prescribed antibiotics, common strains can quickly mutate and even more quickly become resistant. The CDC ultimately concludes in 2018, 70% of the bacteria responsible for nearly 2 million infections acquired in the United States annually are resistant to at least one common antibiotic. Inappropriate doctors' prescribing methods are creating a near perfect storm. Fewer drugs, faster rates of resistance, and us fighting to stay healthy. Listen, our physicians are stuck in their ways, and if we want change, we have to be the ones asking questions. These are difficult conversations, but your health could be on the line. The World Health Organization encourages the accountable justification method, which requires doctors to explain why a particular prescription was prescribed, and then gives the patient the choice to accept it. If you're unsure of how that conversation should go, see me after the showcase. I've created a list of questions that you can ask your doctor, like, have you checked my history of antibiotics? What if this particular prescription doesn't work? Why this particular prescription? And does it interfere with other drugs that I'm on, like my birth control? Then leave it in the patient waiting room for future people to consider. Talking about your health is hard, but it's something that I was forced to learn how to do. Between November of 2016 and May of 2017, I was prescribed antibiotics 18 consecutive times to treat a resistant throat infection. The excessive rounds of antibiotics literally shattered my immune system, and if I don't truly guard my health, I could die of a simple infection. I'm a lucky survivor. But if we don't start questioning our doctors, we'll be fighting for so much more than change. We'll be fighting for our lives. You don't truly appreciate the health that you have until you no longer have it. Which is why it's critical that we discuss the 2 causes of antibiotic resistance. We have to put our reputation for advocacy to the test. We have to fight for awareness, fight for patient engagement, and fight for acknowledgement of this issue. We literally have to be in this together.
Very powerful speech, thank you. Our next presentation is going to be a duo interpretation. This is an interpretation event. So in duo, the rules are you can't touch or look at each other directly in the eye. So imagine we've got 2 hand puppets here. They're talking, having a meaningful conversation. They have to kind of direct it all out. Without any further ado, please give it up for Mr. Casey Childs and Taylor Ratliff.
I'm not late, am I? Ooh, I'm a little late.
Yeah, you're late.
All right, I'll start dinner.
Already ate.
Well, I thought you were gonna wait for me.
And I thought you were gonna be home 45 minutes ago. Please tell me that you remember to pick up my dry cleaning.
I remembered to pick up your dry cleaning.
Really?
No?
Ooh, my second husband is gonna be so much better.
Yeah, but he won't be nearly as cute, right? Right?
Probably not.
I'm sorry. The intern lunch ended up lasting like 2 hours.
Intern lunch? Why?
Because these kids are working 10-hour days for free.
They get to put on their resumes that they work for Governor Henderson's campaign.
All right, let's hold off with the title. I haven't won yet.
Oh, I forgot. A governor must be humble and relatable.
Exactly. So, what's our strategy to counter your Ivy League education? And I don't think not making the varsity tennis team counts. Or white chicks calling you girl.
Hey, girl! First of all, I'm not your girl, bitch. And second off, get your hands off me.
That's our strategy. Yeah, bring that up in interviews. It's like the 80s equivalent of refusing to sit in the back of the bus.
No. You don't get to make Rosa Parks jokes.
You made Rosa Parks jokes, and you've never even ridden on a bus.
So you're saying that you're more qualified to tell Rosa Parks jokes than me, a black person, a black female person.
Look, I have a black wife. That's like having 10 black friends. I'm basically black by association. I'm gonna go shower. I love you.
After nearly a year in the White House, Omarosa Manigault was suddenly removed from Trump's staff. While Trump praised Omarosa during his campaign, he was quick to later dehumanize her, calling her a low-life dog.
Reuters on August 12, 2018 explains, this sort of racialized hypocrisy is nothing new. George Bush was able to win the 2004 election through last-minute support from black voters, but was quick to turn a blind eye to the victims of Hurricane Katrina. Bill Clinton claimed allyship and played saxophone in black churches, only to later pass legislation resulting in mass incarcerations of African Americans.
Too often, black voters and our issues serve as a political fodder, kindling to be burned, but disposed of once we are no longer useful.
Playwright Meredith Friedman explores this dichotomy and reminds us that disenfranchised communities turn to policy for hope and systemic change.
You wind up pawns in a political performance.
The Firestorm.
By Meredith Friedman.
What are you reading?
Watching Michelle Obama interviews, courtesy of Leslie. She wants me to observe the first lady's interview styles.
Okay, so what do you got?
Michelle looks good in red, blue, and yellow.
My second wife won't hold a candle to you.
Damn right.
Also, you're meeting with Leslie next week to discuss your image.
You did it. And she tells me to relax my hair.
I think she wants to find a way to spin an antitrust attorney into something a little more soft and cuddly.
Okay. Well, you told Perkinsett Leslie that antitrust is a law of competition. I still don't see my dry cleaning in it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What's wrong?
Look, we need to talk. So, my freshman year of college, I was in a fraternity. And one night they asked me to spray paint something on the door of this black kid, Jamal.
Well, what did you spray paint?
Look, no part of me wanted to do this, okay? I was this insecure kid.
Patrick, what did you spray paint?
Go home inward. Cap, I am so sorry.
Why are you apologizing to me? I mean, you didn't write it on my door. Did you apologize to him?
No one knew. I mean, they weren't my words.
Oh, I forgot. You're just the messenger. And you decided to tell me this now because...
It's gonna come out tomorrow.
What happens now?
Look, I understand if you're angry. I do. But my campaign thinks it would be really helpful if you gave a speech on my behalf tomorrow.
I'll take a half day. I'm going to bed.
Gab, I could sleep on the couch.
Why would you sleep on the couch? We have 2 guest rooms.
Okay, in 3, 2.
I want to tell you about a man who spent the past decade mentoring students in low-income communities.
You ever think about relaxing your hair?
A man who will invest state funds into the neighborhoods of our brothers and sisters suffering.
Gabby, can't you just act more like Michelle?
I'm sorry.
What the fuck happened out there?
Besides me, name a black woman that you're attracted to.
What are you talking about?
Name one!
Gabby, I told you, you were the first black woman I dated.
So what changed with me?
Nothing
Did
changed.
you like that I was black? Did it excite you or something?
No, I mean, you excite me, but...
Well, you didn't seem excited the first time that we had sex.
Oh, come on. Are we seriously doing this again?
You kept your eyes shut the entire time. Good strategy, though.
What?
A black wife.
A strategy? Wait, are you trying to suggest that our marriage... Wow, okay, so following your rock fucking solid logic, did you want to be a politician's wife? I mean, did you want the status?
Don't patronize me!
Look, if this was a political move, Gabby, don't you think I would have married a real black woman?
A real black woman?
Gabby, I
what
didn't
is
mean
a
it.
real black woman according to you?
I don't know, man. I wasn't thinking...
Oh, no. You don't get to do that. You don't get to hide behind the word, my words. You said it.
Look, I was angry, okay?
I mean, what's your criteria for a black woman?
I don't have any fucking criteria.
Oh. And what if somebody wrote that shit on my door?
Look, I was angry, okay?
Thing is-
I mean, you forced me into a
But the
fucking
thing
corner.
is, when you grow up constantly reminded of how fortunate you are to live where you live and have the opportunities you have, you don't get...
Look, Gabby.
No! You don't cry! When you're 12 years old and you're playing spin the bottle and this white boy moves the bottle when it lands on you, you don't cry about the constant insinuations that you've gotten everything you worked your ass off over because you are black. And you don't cry when your husband, your white husband, says he needs to find himself a real black woman.
Baby, please. I love you. I mean, we can move past it.
Patrick, I don't think that we can.
No. Yes, we can. Look, I've been thinking. Let's have a baby. I mean, it could be good for us, you know, a new recruit for the campaign.
A new recruit. You know what? I don't know who you are anymore.
That's not what I meant.
I can't!
Gabby!
It's been a pleasure serving on your campaign. Governor Henderson.
Great job, y'all. That's good. I think my explanation helped. I'm sorry. We're going to shift gears again. We're going to welcome Brian Anderson to the front of the stage, please. Let's give it up for Brian Anderson. Brian's going to do an impromptu speech. So he has on that table there a quotation that was randomly selected by one of his coaches. He's never read the quotation before, but he's going to have 1 minute and 30 seconds to prepare a speech that he's going to present to all of you. So let's give it up once again for Brian.
Samuel Longhorn Clemens was a jerk. And he was pretty much known as a jerk for most of his life. But then he got a call from an up-and-coming community telephone station. We know it now as AT&T. It was a big deal back then. But he chose not to believe in it. He had so much money from his books. Tom Sawyer, not that great. But if you think a lot of people had to buy it now, they had to love it back then. There just weren't that many books that you could buy if you were poor and also in the South. But because when he got the call from AT&T, he declined, he lost the opportunity to invest in one of the most profitable enterprises in American history. And this idea that if we don't use what's given to us, we lose out on wonderful opportunities, brings us to today's quotation from him. The man who does not read good books has no advantage over the man who can't read them. Sounds like he should, I don't know, after writing his books, do something good with his money. We can learn from his example and take from it the idea that we must utilize our skills to make them valuable. I agree. First, because it ensures others choose to put their faith in us. And second, because it gives others a path to follow along. So when Mark Twain was becoming Mark Twain, the author of these wonderful childhood tales, or the various tales where you go back and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. Reading Mark Twain's work. I spent a lot of time in the library as a kid. But it was important because if you don't utilize the skills, like if he never became an author, he wouldn't be very famous. The first explanation for why we have to utilize skills in order to actually make them valuable is because it ensures others choose to put their faith in us. This is best exemplified through first analyzing Malcolm Ong and then looking at John Green. Malcolm Ong is known as the fish kingpin of Singapore because while he spent about 20 years in the computer tech industry, he wanted to become a fisherman because being on the computer all day is really boring. And also super stressful. I have a paper due tonight. I don't want to go back. But he became a fisherman, and even though he had officials chose to believe in him instead of fishermen who could not code a computer because he had those skills, making him more valuable than others in the field. This is also exemplified when analyzing John Green. John Green is a prolific author. Better than Mark Twain, because, his books are more interesting. But he is very interesting because instead of just thinking he's going to write the next great American novel, there are a lot of people in the WKU English department who think they're about to write the next great American novel. But they haven't done it yet, and so people choose to continue putting their faith in John Green and others who are already famous. Well, through analyzing and Green, it's clear that we have to utilize our skills because then others choose to believe in us. It is a competition after all, and that fosters our development. But it's not just about winning for the sake of winning ourselves. Mark Twain often wrote wonderful works and donated to poor Southern communities because you want others to be able to follow along. That's the second explanation for why we have an obligation to use the skills we're given. And it's best exemplified through analyzing Benjamin Banneker and then looking at Cleve Jones. Benjamin Banneker is one of the greatest inventors in American history. A black man in the 1700s, he laid the groundwork for making sure that others along the way could get into top-tier universities. Because he had the skills that many others were not afforded, and his utilization of them through inventions like what created the Poor Richard's Almanac, through doing things for timepieces and clocks that no one else at the time could, it became much more possible for others to go to university even if they were from poor backgrounds because it became clear that making those investments was a wise choice. This is also exemplified when analyzing Cleve Jones. Cleve Jones, fantastic autobiography if you ever want to check that out and follow along in his work there, had the ability to mobilize people, something that not everybody with the vision of social justice has. Cleve Jones created the memorial quilt, the largest quilt in American history for HIV and AIDS victims. We here have the skills, the presentation and communication skills to move people like that. But if we were silent all of the time, if we never read books and then spoke their message, we would be no better than people who are not on the forensics team. So I'm presented with today's quotation. The man who does not read good books has no advantage over the man who can't read them. We took from it that we must utilize our skills to make them valuable, because it ensures others choose to place their faith in us, and because it ensures that others can follow along. So while Samuel Longhorn Clemens was a bit of a jerk and could have made so much more money, he found an opportunity eventually.
Thank you, Brian. Our final speaker this evening will be presenting a collection of poetry, all centered around a particular theme. So Miss Ambam gathered poetry from all different corners of different books, different parts of the internet, slam poetry, and she's putting it all together under one theme. So let's please give it up for senior Andrea Ambam.
A white woman stands outside of Trump Towers eager to voice her dissent, turns to her best friend and begs her to snap a social justice selfie, raises a sign that reads, "Protests are the new brunch!" And I can't help but think how black skulls crack on concrete like eggs in a pan. My older brother is really good at being older. His outfit goes nowhere wrinkled. He likes his chicken and waffles in the same plate, but not in the same bite. I called my brother today. Just because I could. Because he's still alive. This was my protest. Dear white people at protest, we are shattered voices and t-shirts. You are clever posters and Pepsi cans. You come ready and rapid to pledge your new allegiance and flag our story. But I am not amused when you sing our solidarity, nor am I amused when you call yourself radical. The statue of Harriet Tubman speaks to the pink pussy hat. I guess gentrifying the movement wasn't enough. You had to colonize my likeness. Is this what I slaved for? So you could place this symbol of white femininity on my skull like a tiara? Does this make me worthy? Dear white people at protest, stop! On October 7, 2018, in light of Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation, feminists across the country galvanized to show disdain for the assaulter. Their way of doing so? Taking a knee. As the week argues on February 28, 2018, in an era where we have seen a nationwide surge in organized resistance, the newest form of cultural appropriation is protesting. From witty signs that make viral Instagram posts to the pink pussy hat being placed on Harriet Tubman's statue at the Women's March, beyond just hijacking the movement, white people have reduced protesting from a dangerous, sometimes deadly resistance to simply a fun new trend, ignoring the historical necessity of protest for many communities. So to the poetry, protests are the new brunch by Johannes Freeman, other ideas for Pepsi commercials by Amir Safi, protests by Imani Suzanne, Harriet Tubman Speaks by Devon Eastwood, and Dear White People at Protest by Iman Lauren, a program. Because for black and brown bodies, our very existence is a protest. In a 2017 commercial, Kendall Jenner de-escalates a protest with a can of Pepsi. Other ideas for Pepsi commercials. Take one. Instead of pepper spray, police officers shoot protesters in the face with the shaken up can of Pepsi. Take two. Standing Rock loses the battle to the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Missouri River flows with Pepsi on the perfect day for protest. Just the right temperature to peacefully assemble. She checks whose death is on the menu. Obituaries make for perfect recipes. She orders a Bloody Mary, and the ghost of Sandra Bland offers her wrist, fills a glass, adds 3 parts no justice, 2 parts no peace, with a sprinkle of no indictment, but it's too strong. Needs watered down, like it's been hosed down in the streets until it cannot stand. Dear white people at protest, y'all keep stealing. Keep resting on the only concrete we do have, our resistance, just another thing you can take. But this ain't no mini buns and boxer braids. This be Bantu nuts and cornrows. This that original shit. That life or death shit. But you turn our picket signs into white picket fence. I called my brother today because I know for a fact that they might kill my brother today. Just because he's black? Because he's still alive? So this is how I fought the man for the man I loved the most. This is how I taught the government about itself. But it's no surprise you taint my memory. Why not remind the world of the trail I blazed? A trek of blood and sweat from Maryland to Canada. Why did your feminism ignore my path? Was the route too intersectional? Take 3. Michael Brown throws his hands up in the air, and each hand, a can of Pepsi. Take 4. Tamir Rice is just playing in a park with a can of Coke. Take 5. Blue cans matter. Dear white people at protest, This ain't a hot new hit for you to fiend over. Our chants, our cries, do not belong on the Billboard Top 100. This ain't no shoe. They are shooting at us. Wow. No nay will negate the sounds of batons beating the backs of unruly brown bodies with full belly. She picks the limbs of little black boys from her teeth, wipes the crumbs of fallen bodies from her sundress. She exits her protest, just as alive as she entered. Does not acknowledge the smoke bombs, the bullet casings, and the tears of childless mothers waiting below her feet. She never learned to eat without making a mess. I called my brother today. Each unanswered ring permission to panic. Yesterday, I was an activist. Yesterday, I was a radical. Yesterday, I was ready to set this country on fire, auction block by auction block. But today, I am just a little sister. Today, this is all the protest I have left in me. Dear white people, it must be so much fun to be a part of a culture for one day and leave before the killing happens. My every breath is a protest, is resistance, but this body just can't seem to fit neatly between the hours of 1 and 3 after brunch and back before dinner for black bodies. We swallow gunshots like y'all swallow home-cooked meals. Like y'all swallow family dinner at the table. No matter how hard we try, the table is always missing one. Take 8. Kendall Jenner cracks open a can of Pepsi and pours blood into her mouth. Does not stop until she's consumed everything inside and smiles at the camera with syrup-stained teeth. Do you see it? The definition of appropriation. The ability to take and take everything. And nothing at the same time. So don't honor me with your pink plush ladies. Tell stories of me, a disabled colored woman, roaming the woods with a shotgun in one hand and my people's future in the other. Tell stories of our protest, of our rebellion.
Thank you very much for that, Andrea. Can I have all of the coaches of the students who performed to please stand up so we can give it up for them? Thank you all very much for everything you do every day. Let's give one big round of applause for all of our incredible performers. For coming this evening. For those of you who are visiting with us, and as a reminder for all of our students, it's not enough to just listen to what you witnessed tonight. You have to take it into the community. Tell people about the things that you said. Let's raise conversations about the things you saw this evening. Thank you all very much for coming, and have an awesome homecoming weekend.